Okay, now we'll roll for initiative. And it's the Confederates again for 3. Remember the end of the last action phase, the Union attacked Price's forces in Springfield, was repulsed, but did an equal amount of damage, and both sides were demoralized because of the tie, because neither was in full supply. There are a few things that we're thinking about here as the Southern player. You'll notice that I replaced McClellan and his stack with the Army of the Potomac marker up there, just to save board clutter. There's an optional rule for use of these armies that army stacks get to re-roll 1s in battle, assuming that they have high morale, which they get by winning a closely fought battle where both sides have at least 7 strength points committed to the battle. I'm not really sure I'm going to play with that rule, but just to save down in clutter, we have the Army of the Potomac chit here. If I end up breaking stacks down a lot, then maybe we can just forego these army markers. They might not really be worth the clutter that they save. They might cause more trouble. So, some things that the Southern player is thinking about doing. It would be nice to reinforce Price with that 1 SP down on the Arkansas-Missouri border. The problem is that he couldn't get there without potentially being intercepted. He has to cross the river, and if you look closely, you'll notice there is a green border around his hex, which should indicate that it's a river crossing border. Normally river crossing borders have the river running through them. This is on the hex side edge, but nonetheless it seems that one could cross the east, northeast, or northwest hex into this hex, or vice versa, without incurring any movement penalty. So it would only take him 2 movement points to get to Springfield, but if he were to do that, he would be inside that demoralized Union stack's range. If he were to move west and then try to get up to Springfield, he'd have to pay, it would appear, an extra movement point by crossing that stream there. So he could only get to just outside of Springfield. So he wouldn't really be able to help anything. So I think we're probably just going to leave him there. Johnston will come back to. He's fortified. He's got 2 troops. He's far less than Halleck's 5. It doesn't make much sense to move him out to challenge Halleck. We don't really have any good advantage to doing so. There are 2 SPs down here in New Orleans that aren't really doing anything. Excuse me, Nolans. They would be more profitably placed inside Fort St. Philip and Fort Jackson and or Proctorville. The thing about New Orleans and Fort St. Philip and Fort Jackson is that Union ships could run the guns past those forts up the Mississippi River into New Orleans. If they did that, they would cut off supply to Fort St. Philip and Fort Jackson from the city of New Orleans. If Proctorville is still operational, then it's possible to supply those forts from Proctorville. So a naval occupation of Lake Pontchartrain and then a military occupation of Proctorville would isolate that fortress, and it would just be those 2 fortresses, and it would just be a matter of time before they capitulated. And you see there it's worth 3 smuggling points, or 3 blockade points. So we very much are interested in trying to cover Proctorville and or the fort and or New Orleans by naval power before the North has an opportunity to try to launch an invasion either on the fortress or on Proctorville. It's unlikely that the Union's going to launch an invasion on the fortress because we're playing with that optional rule where their naval transport capacity is significantly limited until at least phase, or at least until turn 4. I believe it's turn 4. So they would really be long odds to try to take that fort, but Proctorville is a possibility. So I think we're going to spend 1 movement point, or 1 activation point, moving these 2 SPs from New Orleans to Proctorville. So that's 1 of our 3 activations. So we have 2 more. There aren't any more free troops left to cover any more of these ports. Oh, actually, here you go. Right here we can move into Port Royal and cover that with that 1 SP. Okay, so then we have 1 more activation, and I'm going to do something. So I'm going to do something that might seem to be a little desperate, but it really isn't. And this just sort of occurred to me when I was thinking about the restrictions on movement that the Potomac causes here. If the Army of the Potomac were to charge across into Alexandria, Beauregard would of course have an opportunity to intercept. If he successfully intercepted, because these troops are crossing a river, only 3 strength points would get across to challenge Beauregard to try to fight their way into northern Virginia. So Beauregard doesn't really need 5 troops. It guarantees success, but we could play it a little riskier, and we could drop him down from the 5 that he has in his stack to 3. And if we could give 2 more to Johnston, bump him up to 4, and use a card, Johnston could try to make an assault on Patterson. So in order to try to break the stalemate in Northern Virginia and get a little bit of traction and put the Union on the defensive, buy the Southern forces some time and try to counteract this mounting threat in the west, I think we're going to try to launch an assault on Patterson's forces in Northern Virginia. Okay, so I've broken down Beauregard's stack, and the way this is going to work is that Johnston, if he is going to lead the attack, and we want him to lead the attack, is going to have to himself actually move with his stack back across these mountains. Just imagine Johnston's there too. Then he can pick those up, and we can put Beauregard back together in Manassas. And then these 4 troops are going to move back across the mountain. But Patterson has an opportunity to try to intercept. I don't know if he wants to or not, but let's just see if it's even an option. Not an option. Okay, so that saves us from having to wonder about the relative merits of doing that. So Johnston is going to move into Harper's Ferry and attack Patterson. So Patterson has the opportunity to either defend or attempt to avoid battle. But again, if he fails the avoid battle roll, he's forced to defend without the benefit of his entrenchments. So not too excited about doing that. So we're going to have a straight up battle here. It's going to be 4 SPs attacking 3 SPs. The modifiers are going to be 1 on this for the Southerners, but they're going to use the special card. They're going to use an East card to bump it up. So it's going to be 3. So 4 column plus 3 versus 3 column plus 2. Okay, let's see. So that didn't work out so well for the rebels. On their 4 column plus 3, they rolled a modified 4. So they inflict 1 SP. The Union rolled really well, though. They rolled a 5. They're going to add 2 for their entrenchment, which is a 7 on the 3 column. It's going to take them to a 1 star. So both sides are going to lose an SP, and Johnston is going to be forced to retreat back to his original starting hex. And at the same time, he will not become demoralized. He will become demoralized because he lost the battle. It's not a tied battle. If it were tied, he could avoid demoralization because he's in full supply. But no matter what, he's going to become demoralized. So now the Union is still interested in being as aggressive as possible. Unfortunately, it's not going to be possible to rally this stack to remove the demoralized marker and at the same time attack in the same turn, even with the use of a special action card. So setting up for the 4th action cycle, or the 4th action phase, which is the one to come, the Union is going to anticipate using Curtis's stack offensively. He still outnumbers Price in Springfield, and they're going to rally the troops, taking away the demoralized marker, so that's 1 activation. So 2 more activations now, and I think the Union would like to be a little bit aggressive in the east, seeing, maybe inspired by Patterson's successful defense there of Harper's Ferry. So how can they do that? Well, one of the things that I want to do a little bit of house cleaning, I'm going to use a special naval action to move one of these SPs at Hatteras Island up to Annapolis. This is with the idea that he's going to get shuttled out to some southern port to help in the blockade efforts in the future. So 2 more activations now. I'm going to use one of these activations to actually try to move the Army of the Potomac into Alexandria. So, and I forgot to mention that this fortress, which was being built in Washington, is complete. This fortification then is superfluous, needs to come off the map. And the Army of the Potomac will move into Alexandria, but let's see if Beauregard can intercept them. This is a pretty important roll here. So Beauregard is a +1 modifier to his interception roll. He rolls just enough to do it, so we're going to have 3 SPs from the Army of the Potomac in Alexandria, along with McClellan's unhelpful support. And this is, of course, 2 activations because McClellan is a cautious general. And now Beauregard's, this is going to be against Beauregard's 3. He's not going to have the benefit. This is against Beauregard's 3. He's not going to have the benefit of his entrenchments because, of course, he left them to go to Alexandria to intercept these troops. So it's 3 on 3. Beauregard has a die roll modifier of +1, but the Union will use a special action card, an East card, to add a +2 die roll modifier. So both are rolling on the 3 column. The Union +1 to the Confederates +1. So the Confederates roll 5 and the Union rolls a 6. So a 5 versus a 6 on the 3 column, we have a standoff. Both sides lose 1 SP. So both sides lose 1 SP. Nobody becomes demoralized because everyone's in full supply. So I forgot to add that because the Army of the Potomac was crossing a river, the defenders added another 1 to their defensive total, which just means we have a complete tie. The die roll was completely a tie. And so both sides lose 1. We have a standoff there, then in Alexandria. And Beauregard gets to move up and occupy Alexandria, which arguably is a stronger position for him anyway. And now in the supply segment, because the Union was the phasing player, and during his supply phase check, these fortifications, these rebel fortifications in Manassas do not disappear. So that's the end of the 3rd phase. Time to roll for the 4th.